Hey everybody, this is Kurt Molly here again with a good friend of mine, Mr. Jesse Elder. So I'm going to do one of these long intros because I've known Jesse for a good long while. I want to say close to 7 or 8 years if I think about it. Now,
It's going on 8 years.
I think 8 years. Yep. So I met Jesse and Ron Lynch at the exact same time. I can tell Jesse was sitting on the couch, was sitting over here. Ron was sitting on the couch over here. I was sitting in his chair over here. I'll never forget. David introduced Jesse. David Gonzalez, a good friend of ours who runs the Internet Marketing Party, introduces Jesse to basically say, hey, this is a person who's never really taken a formal test. Like, you got a driver's test, but like formal education, formal test, formal degrees, not really. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But Jesse was in martial arts, became a black belt, used to actually fight competitively on the weekends. I'm going to ask you for that story because I know that was a big pivotal point. If you don't mind, I'll go into that here in just a second. So Jesse was a fighter, started building clubs, started building associations, had processes that really just started to expand out. And essentially what Jesse decided to do is kind of at that point had a pivotal moment where a lot of people may be facing right now, walked away from that business, sold that business, and kind of started to figure out what he wanted to do next. And I kind of met you around that time. And one of the things I'll never forget is some of the stories that you told, and we're just starting to get to know each other. Jesse gives everybody a hug. I'll never forget this. And the hug was 3 seconds longer than probably any other man has hugged me, but it wasn't weird. It wasn't awkward. I'll never forget it. Now I do the exact same things many times where I hug people that I know, and they're like, man, that's the one thing that I was waiting for. I haven't seen you in a long time. So it was one of the best ways to ever meet you. Now, Jesse's one of these people, he'll talk about ethical cult building. He'll talk about time piercing. And you're kind of like, I wonder what that means. You'll understand here in the content. What I can tell you is Jesse creates his own reality from living in a 7,000 square foot house to a small little apartment to a large house to being homeless or nomadic or however you want to call it, or anything that you want to create in between. I've made some of life's biggest decisions when I've actually been with Jesse at a place that's been his residence. And it's like, the relationship we have is phenomenal. And what the way I mean by that is sometimes I'll be talking about Jesse at events we'll go to, literally, man, you should meet my friend. This happens all the time. This is not an exaggeration. You got to meet my friend Jesse. And well, who's Jesse? Oh, actually, Jesse's right here. And then Jesse just happens to appear. So if you've been online for a little bit, you may have seen Jesse. If you haven't already, the content we're about ready to go over isn't necessarily just, let me show you where the clicks are. This is some brain science and it's really just being a beautiful human to help other people grow and not to be used in a malicious way. So, man, Jesse, thank you so much for being here. And we're going to do a short interview, and then you're going to do your thing. And I just thank you, sir. That is the biggest part I want to say.
I'm honored to be here, man. That was like a trip down memory lane itself, just all those incredible experiences. So glad to know you, man, and really, really honored for this.
So I'm curious because of people's histories. There's lots of, kind of pivotal moments going on right now. People are making decisions or whatnot. So would you mind to kind of take us down memory lane for a little bit? The fighting school thing that you had got into and perfected for a good long while?
Yeah, in retrospect, I can see how every one of those phases completely set me up for the next one. Like a lot of people in here, a lot of people that are watching this that have invested their time and their energy and their resources in just getting this. You're on your own journey. You may be really clear on your target, where you're going, and maybe you're not. You might be just trying to get away from something and looking for a new vehicle. And that was me for a lot of years. I didn't have this master plan. I just knew what felt right to me right now. And for whatever reason, I'd always been pretty good at listening to that inner voice, listening to that inner intuition, whatever you want to call it. And so I found myself from a pretty young age training martial arts, teaching martial arts, doing these little, tournaments on the weekend. And one day I got an invitation to go and enter this grappling tournament, which I'd never really, it was just brand new to that, like ground fighting, and Ultimate Fighting Championship was just starting. And so nobody really knew about it. But I knew enough about that feeling, that feeling of, man, if I don't do this, I'm really going to regret it. And, what's the worst that's going to happen? So let me get in there and do it. So I did it, and I ended up winning. And then that built my confidence. But I didn't win by accident. I won because I trained. It's one thing to watch somebody training and think, all right, well, I got it. You don't got it. You don't got it until you get in there and immerse yourself And I know there are people also who are watching this who are very accomplished in the marketing game, who are following you, following the belt method, following everything that you've put together, and who are using this tactically, not just absorbing it, but actually drilling in, and they're going to go help a ton of people, make a ton of money. So there's a lot of parallels between martial arts and marketing and entrepreneurship. And so I loved it. I loved the feeling of knowing for sure where I stood at the end of a match. There was no gray area. There's no participation trophies. It was like, you win, or you lost. And what I learned from that experience is that two people enter the ring, only one will win, but both will gain. And that just eliminated all my fear of losing. Because if I get into the match and I lose the match, I haven't lost as a martial artist. I haven't lost as a human being. So let me just invest my time and energy in this. I can't lose. And so I started to develop a real eagerness for getting in the ring. And then that led to one day I got an invite. I was like 21 years old. I got invited to compete in these no holds bar fights. And they were in this old club. I'll never forget it. It was a sneakers nightclub, San Antonio, Texas. I even remember the name because they used to do all these radio ads all the time. So it was like branded into my moment of time. That's propaganda for you right there. 11431 Parambital Sneakers Nightclub.
I know exactly where that was. I used to live right down the street. I know exactly where that was.
Yeah. So they would have, it was actually on Thursday nights was fight night, and it was no rules, no time limit, no safety equipment, and no weight limit. So you've got all different size dudes getting in there, and it was a brawl. And I realized that I'm now faced with a moral dilemma because I've been teaching martial arts, training martial arts, teaching other people supposedly how to protect themselves in a real situation. And I'd never been in a real situation.
It's about to get real. It's about to get real.
Man, I got a choice here. I either have to enter and find out what I'm actually made of, or I have to stop teaching because I'm completely out of integrity. And I realized I have to get in there. I have to experience this. So all the other tournaments I'd done up until then were, when I would ask myself that question, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I get outpointed. Somebody scores more points than me. But in this one, the worst thing that can happen is you die. You suffer a severe injury, or you go to the hospital. And but I couldn't. I was already too far down the path. I was already too far down the road of this self-discovery through martial arts and through training. And I realized I have to experience this. So I trained my face off. I was doing 2-a-day trainings. I was meditating. I was journaling. I was really starting to understand the connection between my own mental control, understanding my emotions, and how that was showing up in training. So I learned a lot of those things back then, ended up competing, and long story short, ended up doing well. I had 8 matches that I won. I had 2 that I lost, and it was a fantastic experience. And I became addicted to the process of testing. And I started testing all sorts of different techniques, even started to realize that I have beliefs that I'm so attached to. This is easy. This is hard. Well, those are beliefs. That's a lot of money. That's not very much money. Those are beliefs. They're not objective realities. They're completely subjective. And I realized that if I can test a technique or test a training method, why can't I test whole paradigms? Why can't I just try on this belief system? Because that doesn't define me. I am not my beliefs. So I started experimenting, and I tested everything, man, from diet to relationship structures to theology and religion and spirituality. And eventually I realized that, I don't really care anymore about what's quote unquote true, because I'm not looking for the truth. I'm just looking for what's useful. What can help me to grow and be a better human being? And then what can allow me from that place of qualification and experience, what can I do then to help others? Because the more you help others, the more you receive. And so that was really the basis of this whole journey. And then I applied that same mindset to opening the schools. We did pretty well with that, built up a chain of schools. We had 8 schools and then a consulting company. We were doing about $3 million in revenue. And then I realized that I'm done. Like I'm kept hearing that voice. It's time to do something else. Don't know what it is, but sold the schools. Ended up 2013, right around the time you and I met, was in total transition, but I had a couple of private clients, and things have just kind of turned out from there.
So I'm going to talk about that journey just a little bit from what I know from this is a great transition. So essentially what ends up happening is, from what I've learned from you, is you really got involved in a lot of processes and procedures. Everything had a structure. So as you had a frame and as you started to build out your different clubs and studios, everyone knew exactly what to do. I don't want to say militant, people can take that word wrong, but there was a very, very structured process in how that entire thing happened.
Extremely structured. There was no deviation.
No deviation. Absolutely. There is no, as our good friend Ron Lynch, there is no winging it ever.
Right.
And the other thing is
not for the professionals. Not for the professionals. The amateurs wing it and call it creativity. But creativity on a basis of stupidity is suicide.
I love that. Thank you. Well, this actually leads me perfect into the next point, perfect segue, which is this. So when we're talking about martial arts, for example, and fighting, you're very specific, and you can either be hit or dodge it, or you could die. There are issues. A lot of people are what's the best way to say this? Super relaxed, don't pay attention to the language that they use. So something that you talk about is ethical cult building. There are some ninja skills, but most people don't even think about what's coming out of their mouth. You want to talk about ethical cult building, what that means for just a minute, and how most people have no idea how important this stuff is?
Yeah. Well, there's a question underneath that that I've observed a lot in myself and with clients and people that I've helped to grow their audiences or close sales. And many people are attracted to marketing so that they can make money. No problem there. So that they can make a difference, help others, their life will improve, and then they're gonna work on their own stuff. When I make enough money, then I'll be happy. Or when I make enough money, then I'll be able to, get that coach that can help me sort out inner stuff. In the meantime, they're sending out these messages and well-crafted headlines, and you can write copy, but your audience is increasingly discerning, especially because the marketplace is crowded, and especially during times of chaos. People's alert, man, their spidey sense is on high alert. And so even really well-performing copy takes a hit when people are energetically very attuned. So what they're buying is you. They're buying the embodiment of your experience. And this term ethical cult building that I invented back in 2014 was very much understanding that there are cult-like principles in building any organization or any group, and to ignore those principles is to lose people to those cults that are actually trying to suck them in. So I thought, if I'm going to fight cult with cult power, then it has to be an ethical cult. And my definition of that is, a cult is very, very easy to get into, and it's very hard to leave.
Ooh, yeah.
An ethical cult is the opposite. It's actually harder to get into, and it's very easy to leave.
I love that distinction.
And so every community that I've developed, and I've built dozens now at this point, usually around a specific theme or concept or problem that we're trying to solve together. And once that problem is solved, everybody just goes off, to the four corners of the earth and does their own thing. It's like a Hollywood movie. You might work with the same actors and the same producer, same director, but you don't expect to show up to work every day and see the same people for the next 40 years. You develop a reputation that you own, that then gets spread throughout the industry, and people learn, work with that person, work with her, work with him. They're awesome. And so I've built dozens of communities around different products and programs, everything from meditation and mindset to journaling and productivity to high ticket selling to building audiences. And in every single one of those communities, there are 6 basic types of messages that are the signature of an ethical cult. And most people, you can learn this, but it has to come from an authentic, embodied place in order for it to be real. And once it's real, then it's fun, and marketing and sales loses all of its resistance, and you couldn't stop yourself if you tried. And next thing you know, people are knocking on your door going, how can I give you money? And you're like, well, let's see if you're qualified first. It's a lovely place to come from.
So I want to step back and kind of unpack this just a little bit. This is really good. Thank you very much for this, Jesse. So essentially what happens is, I love this distinction. Yeah, you're right. Cults are really easy to get into, right? And then they start stripping you down of your beliefs, and there's all these other issues, and you just can't leave. But to be able to, when people come in the opposite way, where they already kind of feel stripped down, they don't have the right beliefs, and they come into a community This is where I love our Facebook group. This is why we have free Facebook groups. You do lots of Facebook groups. We align the belief system of people who want to accomplish a common goal. So what I want you to know about Jesse is, if you follow Jesse online, he does have some nice edited videos. There are some nice websites, but for the most part, we are talking about a journal, we are talking about luggage, and we are talking about low tech, high paycheck, and a phone and a pen. And that's it. So what I like is when I'm sitting in a room with Jesse and other marketers, and people are like, oh, Jesse, what you should do is there's this click funnel, upside down, reverse funnel, and Jesse just smiles. You don't say this, but I can hear it in the back of your mind because I've known you for years. I would like to say this. I would love for you guys to compare stacks, meaning how much the person giving advice has made versus people will fly out to Jesse or all around the world for $30,000 to $50,000 or more to really get some really intense, in-depth messaging from Jesse on this. So I want to back up for just a second. Facebook groups. Facebook groups is really scary for Facebook, and Facebook loves it. Facebook loves it because they run commercials. Facebook, they say, hey, join Facebook groups. It's scary because, just to be very open, and I don't want to start an argument, Jesse, no, just the flat earther movement. There are always people around who believe that the earth is flat. Now that you put people inside of a community together and you're with like-minded people, you can't be wrong. Now all of a sudden your logic kind of shuts down from your head, and everyone now believes in that group that the earth is really flat. That is kind of the way that cult thinking works. Ethical cult building, what I heard you say, Jesse, is you've compartmentalized some places where there's a need in the market that you've helped build a community, low tech, low paycheck. And from knowing you, if you follow Jesse, you've built a very lucrative life from really just helping a lot of people up and helping people come together and then spread apart. Like, wow.
we call them pop-up tribes. Like we'll do a pop-up tribe. Well, like we did one back in October, and it was called Freedom Teachers. The group still exists.
Yeah.
The academy is now launched in a virtual mode, so it's evergreen. But that was just an idea that kept developing. You know, how do we work with somebody who's a coach, consultant, a healer, maybe they're a financial advisor, maybe they're a massage therapist. What they all have in common is they're all helpers of humans. They make a living by working with other people. So let's help them dial in their message, get past all their money blocks that keep them, pushing their wealth out in front of them. And so we put together this Facebook group. It grew to 5,000 members, and it was all organic. And then I launched a webinar, and I did the webinar from my phone. I just set up my phone, did the webinar, looked at the comments, all in the Facebook group. That webinar went for 4 hours. It was fire. It was teaching, it was confrontation, it was help, it was support, questions and answers, rolled out an offer. And over the next 3 weeks, we did $421,000, all organically, all profit. And funny you mentioned that, because a couple of weeks after that, I was talking to somebody who's a marketer. I have so much respect for people who really understand this, because a lot of it I don't. I just understand messaging. And so when they're explaining about the tech and, like you said, the reverse funnels and everything else, and I'm just like, I don't have time for that, man. It would be too expensive for me to back off from what I'm doing. And that's a big part of why I teach the messaging that I do, because it's usually the missing piece for people once they've got the tech set up. And just kind of as a point of, hopefully not too much pride, but just to prove that it can be done. If you have good messaging and you're showing up real and you actually care about people, and you can be empathetic and listen to what they're saying and then give them what you're qualified to give them, you don't need much more than a phone. If you have everything else on top of that, you'll do. I mean, I'm sure I would make 5 or 6 times more money in the next quarter by having some more of the more sophisticated pieces in place that you teach. But it really comes down to having the messaging.
Yeah. So I want to give you some time to kind of, we always like to say for Jesse to do his own thing, and you guys will understand here in just a minute. But one of the kind of questions, Jesse, just to kind of segue this, is 2020 is kind of crazy at the time that we're filming this right now. I went downtown Austin, and they're boarding up, 6th Street and a bunch of places downtown. Looks like it's ready for a hurricane. So people could be in their house for a couple of weeks. That's why we're doing the Stuck at Home Summit. Could be a little bit longer. So, what's interesting is some people, I've talked about this in other interviews, 2007, 2008, some people went out and they got an education and they were promised, hey, if you're a teacher or a civil servant, we'll forgive that loan in 10 years. Less than 10% of those loans have been forgiven. It's been a 10-year almost kind of lie. I don't want to bag on formal education, but now is really a time to start sharpening some of these skills that in a very short amount of time, you can make a huge impact on other people's life and yours as well. So Jesse, what I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to turn off my camera and just let you go and do your thing. But 2020 is a little kind of crazy, kind of depends on how you label it. Would you mind giving a little bit of insight into your world, what you're looking for in 2020, and maybe a little bit of insight for some people as they're looking at stressful times or how they perceive this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thank you. The first and foremost, the place to go is always to your own practices of self-care in whatever way that looks for you. Because if you're feeling unsettled, which is completely natural, if you're feeling even fearful and uncertain, these are also very natural responses. But to try and handle your feeling of uncertainty by changing something in your environment, by rushing out to make more money, by rushing out to make a sale, by rushing out to buy food or whatever, to do that from a place of fear always leads to more problems. And so the first thing that I would suggest for anybody who is feeling some pressure to change things is to double down on your own self-care. If you don't have a meditative practice or a journaling practice or prayer or whatever it is for you to get quiet and still and allow yourself to connect more with, your purpose, and like, why the hell are you doing all of this in the first place? Who do you really care about? Why are you doing it for them? 5 minutes, 10 minutes of that per day will give you literal superpowers, and you'll find yourself more focused, more clear, more confident. You'll find yourself relentlessly pursuing whatever it is that you're going to go and build. So that's my first piece of advice for anybody that's going to go and do something. I'm seeing a lot of growth right now in my business by working with people to customize their own self-care protocols. And especially if it's somebody who's an entrepreneur, this is not their first, cycle of ups and downs, but things are definitely changing this year. And a nonlinear situation requires a nonlinear approach to your own growth. And so I won't go much more on that, but for all of you watching this, the first place to go is always go within. Go back to your purpose, go back to your mission, go back to what your vision is, whatever language you use to describe that, double down on that. Spend more time focused on that, because it will absolutely inform and create a lot of clarity around your actions. So with that being said, there are, Kurt and I, when we were riffing earlier, talked about there's these 6 types of messages that create powerful trust between you and your audience, between you and your buyer. And I generally think of trust as a two-sided coin. There is the trust that they have in you, and then there's the trust that they have in themselves. And your responsibility is to create lots of opportunities for trust on both sides to develop, giving them lots of opportunities to be reassured that they can do this. So addressing lots of opportunities before that might not have worked, and explain why, so that they can feel like, wow, this opportunity is different. And then giving them plenty of chances to see who you are and how you operate and what you're offering and what it does, because that will build their trust in you. And for the rest of this particular video on this stay-at-home summit, what I'm going to share with you are the 6 messages that help people to trust you. And so if you're writing this down, you're going to want to just draw a line down the sheet of paper. And there are 3 messages on each side. And the first one, or the first column, there are 3 messages that help people to trust who you are. And if you're watching this going, well, what's the point of having them trust me? I just want them to buy from me. Go back, say that again slow, and hear what you just thought. And I know we've got some veterans in here too that are savvy marketers, and you're probably sitting there nodding your head up and down, going, "Yeah, man, there's no trust, no money dust. You gotta amplify the trust so you can have the tacos come raining in. This is how it works." So the first 3 components of them trusting you are your story or stories. So write that down on one side of the column: stories, philosophies, and lifestyle. Now, you might have heard these words before. You might have your own sense of what that means. We're going to take a little bit unique approach to this. When you're telling stories, it's not just your origin story and how you learn the thing you're teaching or whatever it is, but keep them up to speed. Like, include them in what you're observing and learning and what you've learned, and tell stories. People get drawn into stories in such a ninja way to embed deep meaning. So as Kurt said, you have people's beliefs aligning. You know, if I tell a story about, you know, the first offer I ever made online, where I had a Google Hangout and I did the settings wrong, and I only ended up with 10 people instead of the, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens that would have joined. And my offer was a $9 a month offer, and I closed 30% of the room. Pretty proud of that, 3 out of 10. And then I quickly realized that it's going to take me like 187,000 years at this pace to make any kind of money. When I tell that story to a whole group of people that is brand new at making money, they're all going, yes, that's me. That's my fear. Oh, so you don't just show them that you've made the same mistakes. You show them how you navigated through it and how now they don't have to. So when they're giving you money for your wisdom, your experience, your tools, they're actually buying a time machine. And that's priceless. So telling stories that have lessons in it is really powerful, especially if those stories contain moments of embarrassment, moments of sadness, moments of fear, moments of shame, moments of overwhelm, moments of doubt. And if you can tell that story from a place of power, and if you can even laugh at that story, not laugh at them, but laugh at yourself back then, you will form an unbelievable bond, because the biggest thing in people's mind is, can I do this? Will this work for me? I'm different. So the more stories you share where you were and now where you are today, you're really helping to connect them. So that's the first type of message, is tell stories that have lessons in them. Don't be preachy about it. Be descriptive, not prescriptive. Second one is philosophies. And these may be just more straight up quotes, or it might be your observations about the world. I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of money by being overly religious and overly political. Money's blind to that, in case you haven't noticed. Money's blind to it. So if you're going to polarize politically, and that's important to your business, go for it. But recognize that every time you talk about politics, you're eliminating maybe half of your buyers, because now they don't like you or whatever. Now you might make enough up on the plus side from people who now really, really love you, but it's just more efficient and better to leave politics out of it, leave religion out of it, unless it's from an empowering perspective, where you're not denigrating any particular political party, where you're empowering the person to be a better citizen. Well, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, purple people eaters, doesn't matter what they identify as, they all want to be a better citizen of their world. So there's ways to do that, but overall leave political philosophies and religious philosophies out of it. What you can do, though, is you can share your beliefs. And this is very powerful. You can weave that into stories. These messages are not mutually exclusive, but every time you're sharing a philosophy and demonstrating your philosophies, it creates more trust, creates more opportunity for people to trust you. So, for example, when things started to go sideways with this whole virus thing, the early part of 2020, and I started to see people getting scared and freaked out, I went through some of my own strategy development and came up with the best thing that I could do. And so I started doing these daily mind vitamins. And every morning I will jump on and do a Facebook Live, and we have hundreds of people, over 300 every single time. That might be a lot for you, might be a little, but it was a demonstration of philosophy. I'm not selling, I'm not giving a big product. I'm just sharing philosophies about how I've navigated my own emotions, about how I've observed other people who are successfully doing that. And next thing you know, people are like, I'm coming back for more. So they're trusting me more because I'm sharing more of my philosophies, and they don't have to guess what you're all about. Don't make people wonder what you're thinking. Let them know what you're thinking. One more piece on that. There's no need to be intentionally polarizing. There's tons of people that get off on that. I'm not one of them. I'm not making them wrong. But one of the most popular sayings in all of internet marketing is that I'll let you even fill in the blanks, because I'm sure you've heard this before. If you don't have haters, what's the rest of that statement? You're not trying hard enough. As if having people hate you is a prerequisite for success. I have a very different frame on that. I've certainly got my fair share of colorful comments, everything from, death threats to marriage proposals to, nude pictures to I'm going to come and find you and hunt you down to one guy so creative. He said, I hope you accidentally chop your head off when you're shaving your beard. Like, that took creativity. I appreciate that. But here's the thing. I would pay those people to make such comments because of what it allows my audience to observe. I then can handle that comment, respond to that comment thoughtfully, appreciatively, powerfully. And I've made more money from people who've observed my comments to those so-called haters. I've made at least $250,000 in the last few years from people who messaged me privately for individual coaching because they wanted what they were seeing happen. So don't discount the opportunity to share your philosophy. And if you need to upgrade your philosophies, if you need to up-level your communication skills, there's a lot of resources in the world to be able to do that. So stories and philosophies are the first two pieces. The third one is your lifestyle. And I'm not talking about, Lamborghinis in the garage or getting on a jet and shooting your selfies, or like I was talking to Kurt, to a mutual friend of ours today, and he said, "Yeah, I got a lot of cash right now." And I said, "Yeah, me too. Yep. I've got cash. I've had a client just today paid me on PayPal, and I transferred it to my account, and I'll have that cash in my safe here at the place." Yes. And so we were just laughing about that. I said, "Just think of the Instagram pictures that we'll have when we finish with all this." And that, I make fun of it because it's so stupid, but it also works. People are hooked by that sensational type of lifestyle stuff. I am not suggesting doing that. What I'm suggesting in terms of lifestyle is let people see how you live. I made coffee the other morning on Facebook Live, and it bonded me to my audience. I made a smoothie the other day, and it bonded me to my audience. I play piano because it bonds me to the audience. And I just share how I live, not in a way for people to aspire to, but because I'm comfortable with how I live and I don't have anything to hide. And so that being said, if there are aspects of your life and your personality that might be more polarizing or repulsive, then just enjoy that on your private time. I mean, I love going to Burning Man, but I don't make a big deal out of it because I know that some of my more conservative clients have a lot of judgment about that. And I'm not in the business to convince them. I'm in the business to have them pay me so I can serve them. So lifestyle by sharing, but not from a place of, trying to hold up these trophies to make people chase you. So how are we doing, Kurt? These are the first three.
So we're doing really good. There's one point, though, that I think you kind of skipped over just a little bit, just to be very open with you. And you kind of talked around it. And I don't want to say you talked around it on purpose because I just know your language for a good long time. So many people that I work with, we talk about this in the Belt Method presentation, is they set up this landing page, right, with all this words or whatever. And I learned this from one of the world's top copywriters, Mark Ford, is really it's not copy, it's the articulation of an idea. Mm-hmm. And that's the business they're in, is not just writing stories, but the articulation of an idea. What you've really helped teach more than anything else there's a couple of things that really impacted me, but I know this helps tons of people because as soon as they say this phrase, I know exactly where it came from. And that is so many people that create their entire offer based around my shiny stuff, or you can fill in any other blank. I mean, seriously, can you talk about this for just a minute? Because so many people, will you buy my shiny stuff? I've heard this speech from you so many times, and it's one of the most impactful. Will you talk about your shiny stuff, how you sell your shiny stuff for your $50,000 package shiny stuff?
I can. It's very simple. We probably don't have time in this one, but I can link people to a resource and they can watch it for free. But the whole Lighthouse versus Tugboat analogy is really where this came from. And what a lot of marketers are doing is they're trying so hard to impress and trying so hard to prove that their stuff works. And this is, if you can just tattoo one thing on your brain, you're gonna make more money than maybe you can imagine. Nobody gives. Are we PG-13, rated R? What's the level of the
thing is, remember, if we curse, we're not able to run it as a Facebook ad where people perpetually see this for the next year. So if we can use PG words.
They can read lips. Here we go. Remember this, okay? Nobody gives a flying about your shiny. Remember this, folks, because every time you're talking about your shiny, you're pointing your finger back at yourself, and they get to then sit back and cross their arms and go, okay, all right, I'm watching. When you flip the script and when you put the spotlight on the person who it belongs on, which is them, and you begin to talk to them and ask questions, and they start talking, the more they tell, the more you sell. And this is what I love about Facebook Lives and about Zooms, because you can actually ask people questions. And I didn't set out to start selling. My latest price point on a quarterly package is $60K. I didn't set out to have a $60K package. $60K became a very reasonable investment compared to the profit and the result and the losses that were prevented for the right person. So I just started positioning myself to serve those people. And the way that they are closed on that, they're closing themselves on the gap in their mind between where they are and where they want to be. And they're realizing the only reason they're not in this reality that I've helped them to envision, the only reason they're not there is because they don't have the tools, they don't have a guide, and they don't have the right support. And the second they get the right tools, the right guide, and the right support, they close the gap on that future. So they get very excited about preventing their losses by writing a check. And that is completely done by emphasizing their position, their vision, their goals, their dreams, their pain, their problem. And I've learned that I don't have to know that much about it, especially on a one-on-one thing.
So here's the thing: is you were talking about their problems, their pain, their thing, whatever. You still haven't talked about your shiny stuff yet. So I want to kind of go back to one of my favorite stories with you. Is we were standing in internet marketing party, or standing over at the bar. You're standing right here. I'm standing right here. And I was asking you, like, Jesse, what have you been up to? And kind of talked about it a little bit. And I'll never forget this. And I said something about, what's your common reply when someone's like, hey, Jesse, how can you help me? And you're like, oh, let me talk to somebody. Let me tell you about somebody I just talked with. And you go, this guy comes up to me and they're like, Jesse, why should I do business with you? And I don't remember if this is on the phone or in person. And you're like, well, I don't know, why don't you just tell me about you? And do you mind telling this story? Because I can tell it as a third person, but you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah, this is somebody who's a phenomenal marketer, has been involved in every mastermind under the sun. And we ended up on the phone together. And he's like, I'm interested in working with you, but tell me what you do. And I said, well, man, I would be more than, it was a phone call. I said, I'd be more than happy to tell you about that. But I'm really interested in, what made you decide to call me? What made you decide to get on the phone? And he's like, well, and he started launching into this whole thing about what he's experiencing and where his frustrations are and what his problem is. And every time he would kind of get to a pause, I would say, okay, tell me more. And he would talk more and more and more and more. And we talked for an hour. And by we talked, I mean he talked. He talked for an hour. And at the end of this conversation, he voluntarily said, Jesse, I've been in a lot of masterminds, man. I've coached with so-and-so, 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 who are all great. He said, but I've never felt this way on a call before. I've never felt this way in a session. Your program is exactly what I'm looking for. How can we do this? And I'm just smiling. I'm like, well, it's 3 payments at the time, 3 payments of $15K. Let me know how you want to take care of the first payment. He's like, I'm in. Now I tell that story sometimes, and I will, and there's many versions of it because there's a lot. It's happened so consistently now at the higher level, and this is always the way that I sell with a 5 or 6 figure, will ultimately be a 6-figure relationship. I don't demonstrate or prove anything. It happens almost purely socially, just by proximity and being present and just treating people kindly, but also clearly. And the question that I'll ask when I tell that story, if I'm teaching a seminar or program, is how much about my program did I tell this guy? And sometimes people say, oh, nothing. You didn't tell him anything. But usually one wise person will raise their hand and they'll say, he learned everything he needed to know about your program. He got to find out what that program is all about. It's all about him.
So there's one other thing, without going too deep in this, because I know this is something you would really train on. So you get on the phone with people without going over the exact script. You get on the phone with people and then you ask them, hey, it is $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000, and then you wait. You do not accept payment plans. You accept, PayPal and credit cards. Talk about that. But one thing that you said to me that I really want people to hear, this is really impactful, is people start to feel uncomfortable before they make that investment. and you don't say anything because what you said is, and it could be paraphrasing, I'd love for you to comment. This is the moment of change that's about ready to happen. That uncomfortable place. Do you mind talking about that for just a second?
Yeah, the discomfort that people are feeling, if you have a sales conversation properly, the discomfort that they're feeling is the recognition of the cost that their behavior has created. They've behaved themselves into a position where there's an enormous amount of discomfort, and most likely have also developed a matching level of sedation, a matching level of self-deception. Somebody can be completely out of alignment with their values, but also lie to themselves and say it's not that bad. But then something happens and now it's that bad, and they start getting Google fingers and they start looking for who can help me with this. And then that leads them to you or to the person watching this program to buy their program, or they'll lead them to me. So I already know that all is not well in paradise. Otherwise they wouldn't be coming to us. So I invite them to talk about that. And as they're talking about it and putting their attention on it, they're becoming really aware that this is actually not workable anymore. And then by the time we go, and there's other pieces to the conversation, but by the time they reach that moment of choice, the choice isn't, are they going to give me money? The choice is, are they going to keep living with this hell that they've created for themselves and missing out on this heaven that they've envisioned? Are they going to keep living in that gap, or are they going to take some swift, decisive, confident action to do something about it? And that is the choice that I love bringing people to, because there's always clarity, whether they work with me or not. And to me, that sort of sales relationship is a sacred experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've heard another coach of mine told me this in the past. Sometimes when the pain is great enough, that's when people will make a big change. And I heard someone tell me a story once about a new preacher who shows up to a church. And essentially the preacher's like, young man who's like, hey, I can really do this. And the old preacher's like, best of luck to you, and leaves. And the young preacher runs around town. And he's like, hey, heaven's this amazing place that you can see all your family and friends and your puppies and your dogs and flowers. And it's really great. You can do this and you can do this other thing. And it's so amazing. And you should really come to church, come to church, come to church. And he just wanted to tell everybody how amazing the heaven was and all these great things that you can do. And really what he was doing is, if you think about it, selling his shiny stuff over and over and over. Hey, you got to check this out. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And then that Sunday, his first sermon, he gets up there and there's like 6 people in the audience. And he's like, I don't understand. And the story goes that he goes back to the old preacher and he's like, man, what do you do? And the preacher's like, what'd you promise him? Well, I promised him all these great, amazing things, that this is everything that what everyone wants. And he goes, no, here's what you preach. What you talk about is if you don't change this right now, here's what you're going to face. You're going to face the wrath you're going to face. So this young preacher runs around and says, if you don't do this, if you don't. And the church is overflowing the next week. And then the younger preacher is just amazed. It's, hey, the pain has to be great enough for someone to really change. It's not about the great benefits of your shiny stuff. So, Jesse, you've helped a lot of people throughout the years in different mindset and different modalities. One, where can people find you? That's one of the last questions I have for you. Where can people find you, sir?
Sure. Facebook, Jesse Elder. They can go to my brand page is facebook.com/timepiercer. Or they can go to Instagram @JesseElderLive.
So that's it. So Jesse, 2020, like I said, a little bit crazy year. Appreciate you being here. Any other final parting words, insight, advice that you would like to leave people with?
I will. I'll put together some resources that people can, maybe we'll have a link, or they can just email me for it, because there is a completed part of that strategy with the other 3 types of messages. And I know I opened the loop on that. I want to make sure to close it. So if anybody is
easy. So what we'll do is, with your permission, by the way, with the presentation that you gave for our group, is that okay for the live presentation, by the way, if I also put that in here? Okay, great. So what I'll do is, you'll see here in the link, I'm sorry, say that again.
Anything for you, whatever it will help.
Thank you, sir. What you'll see here is, you'll see a link, which will be thebelt.live/Jesse. This is why we record it and everything else. You'll see the link appear on your screen. Type in that link. I'll contact Jesse. So when you click on it, you'll get the PDF or whatever he has for you to find out more. But again, it's just, if you learned something here, great. If you want to dive a little bit deeper, please do so. But definitely follow Jesse, find out some of the stuff that he's doing. Any parting words, sir?
Just always a pleasure to hang out with you, man. And I'm really excited to see the results that those people who have invested in this go and create for themselves and for their clients and for their families.
Appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much. You have an amazing day. We should have tacos soon when we can be in the proximity of each other without social distancing.
Sign me up.
See you, brother. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks.